Last week I picked up Newsweek magazine, and the main article was an article on Ritalin, which is a medication being given to children today. And I want to give you some of what this article says because I want to show you what lengths parents go to try to get control of their children when they will not do it God's way. Here's how the article begins. It is another medication morning at Winnebago Elementary School in the middle-class Chicago suburb of Bloomingdale. 3 pings sound precisely over the intercom at 11:45 a.m. Principal Mark Wagoner opens a locked file cabinet and withdraws a giant Tupperware container filled with plastic prescription vials. Nearly a dozen students scramble to the office for their Ritalin, a drug that calms the agitated by stimulating the brain. These children, all ages, mostly boys, have been diagnosed with ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, a complex of neurological impairment that takes the brakes off brains and derails concentration. A decade ago, Wagoner, the principal, remembers only 2 Winnebago students lined up for Ritalin. He's uncertain how many more take their medicine at home or on their own. There are no x-rays, no blood tests, no CT scans to determine who needs this medicine. And diagnosing attention deficit remains as much art as science. There are no definitive long-term studies to reassure parents that this stimulant isn't causing some hidden havoc to their child. It takes time for parents and teachers to sit down and talk to kids, says Dr. Sharon Collins, a pediatrician in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where reportedly 8% of the children are on Ritalin. It takes less time to get a child a pill. I think she sees the reality of it. It takes a lot of time to train a child, a lot less time to give him a pill. But turning your disobedient child, your child that lacks self-control, maybe your angry child because that child is not cared for properly, turning that child into a drug addict, is that a solution? Some students take their time-released pills before school. Others take their doses at off hours. One boy's jogging watch is timed to beep for Ritalin at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Like many administrators, Wagner's not sure what to make of it. Are doctors just catching this disabling affliction more often? In other words, why now and not a few years back? Has our culture gone so highball haywire that we've lost patience with the demanding quirks of training our children? ADHD has become, and this is interesting, America's #1 childhood psychiatric disorder. Experts believe that more than 2 million children have the disorder. According to an estimate by the National Institute of Mental Health, about 1 student in every classroom is believed to experience it. Since 1990, Dr. Daniel Safer of Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine calculates the number of kids taking Ritalin has grown 2.5 times. Among today's 38 million children at the ages of 5 to 14, he reports 1.3 million take it regularly. Sales of the drug last year topped $350 million. This is beyond question an American phenomenon. The rate of Ritalin use in the United States is at least 5 times higher than in the rest of the world. It is so common in some upscale precincts that a mini black market has emerged in a handful of playgrounds and campuses, and vitamin R, as it is called, sells for $3 to $15 per pill. Some kids are now using it to crush and snort for a cheap and relatively modest buzz. Now, Ritalin, by the way, is the brand name of the drug known as methylphenidate. Technically, It is a stimulant that appears to increase the level of dopamine in the frontal lobe of the brain, where it regulates attention and impulsivity. It is a powerful drug, and one that the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration has classified as a Schedule II controlled substance, in the same category as cocaine. Parent groups are now lobbying to ease the restrictions on Ritalin to avoid monthly doctor's visits to get a new prescription. The DEA is opposing them, going so far last month as to enlist the help of the International Narcotics Control Board. What we're talking about here is turning children into drug addicts so that parents can get on with their life. Doctors, if they believe they have found a treatment, do not pretend to fully comprehend the disorder. For now, scientists know ADHD is not the result of brain damage. It is not the result of wrong diet. Listen to this. And they're sure it's not the result of bad parenting. You know what bad parenting is? Spanking your child. Dr. James Swanson, a psychologist at the University of California, Irvine, believes it may be the result of something gone awry. Now, there's a real scientific diagnosis. It may be the result of something gone awry. In pregnancy, anything from fetal distress to alcohol, exposure to lead in utero. By the way, all those things can be measured. Dr. Lawrence Greenberg, a Minnesota ADHD specialist, estimates that as many as a quarter of surviving premature infants may have ADHD. Again, an oblique generalization. Other researchers blame heredity. They say you get it from your parents. They're getting close. ADHD researcher Dr. Russell Barkley of the University of Massachusetts reports that nearly half the ADHD children have a parent, and more than 1/3 have a sibling with the disorder. You know what that says? If you come from an out-of-control family, you're likely to be out of control. If your parents have no self-control, it's likely that you won't either. Turning undisciplined children into drug addicts, frightening. Kids usually take 5 to 10 milligrams 3 times a day for primetime schoolwork. They often take drug holidays on the weekends and every few months. Where does this lead? Here's an illustration. Peter Brigger, a little boy age 7. Peter has spun through several different drugs and has many different classroom settings in the past 6 months. Ritalin didn't work. Silert, another drug, was no better. Now, imipramine, an antidepressant, may be causing breathing problems. It doesn't seem to calm him. Without special attention from teachers, he has yet to demonstrate much focus. How revealing is that? Without special attention, he has trouble focusing. What does he do with special attention? Peter spends half his day in Manhattan's PS 191 in a class of more than 20 second graders. On a typical day recently, he sat on top of his desk, headed for the drinking fountain, banged his head with a 3-ring binder. His notebooks were filled with scribbles, decorated intermittently with half-written assignments. Boy, that sounds like every notebook I ever had. I remember one time I was standing on the top of the desk in the middle of the second grade in Rockledge, Pennsylvania. When the teacher came in the room, I thought she was going to be out longer. He's lost so much time, says Millie Morales. Listen to this. The aunt who has cared for Peter since his mom died and his dad went to prison. What's wrong with Peter? He doesn't have a mother, and he doesn't have a father, and nobody pays any attention to him. And he can't stay focused unless he has some attention paid to him. That's not a disease. The article concludes by saying to researchers, it's a classic pay now or pay more later situation. Studies indicate, listen to this, that those with untreated ADHD are more likely to become alcoholics, smokers, and drug abusers than the general population. Sure, undisciplined people with no self-control are more likely to behave like that. More than 1/3 drop out of school, of course. And about 1/10 of ADHD adults attempt suicide. What you have is a dysfunctional, antisocial, unloved, angry, upset, undisciplined, lacking self-control child who becomes that kind of an adult. Formula for disaster. Now, in case you want to look at the diagnostic list, I'll give you a checklist. Professionals base their diagnosis of ADHD on the following guidelines. And they give a whole bunch of them. There might be 20 of them. And they say if any 6 of these applies to you, you've got it. You can pick your 6. First, pays little attention to details, makes careless mistakes. Has a short attention span. Doesn't listen when spoken to. Doesn't follow instructions, fails to finish tasks, has difficulty getting organized, avoids tasks that require sustained effort, loses things, is easily distracted, forgets things during the day, fidgets, squirms in seat, leaves seat when remaining seated is expected, runs about, climbs excessively, has difficult playing quietly, acts as if driven by a motor, talks a lot, and blurts out answers before the question is complete. You know who they're describing? All of our children. Don't kid me. That's all of my children. That's all of my grandchildren. That's me. I don't have a disease. Every kid is like that if he's not taught self-control. Every report card I got, the first few years, and I'm telling you the deep secrets, folks. Every report card I got as a little kid in my early years of school said the same thing. Johnny doesn't pay attention. Johnny talks too much. Johnny won't stay in his seat. Johnny fiddles and makes noises with his pencil. Johnny lacks self-control. Johnny doesn't do his best. And every time I took home a note like that, I got spanked. I had a lot going on in my head, and I couldn't concentrate on just one thing because I was busy with a whole lot of things. God made me a certain way. He wired me to be able to deal with a lot of stuff. And that's my life now. I'm glad my parents didn't turn me into a drug addict. I didn't have a disease or a disorder. That was just me. My parents had a tremendous challenge teaching me self-control because I had so much mental energy and so much physical energy. I still have a lot of energy, even now. And you can only imagine what I was like before I was 12. I was a rocket going in every direction.
This week on Christian World News, gang violence rules in Haiti's capital as the U.S. presses for international intervention.